What a perfect day to go on a walk and talk about shipwrecks for this episode of On the Deck. And joining me today is repeat offender from the state of Michigan, maritime archaeologist Wayne Lusardi. Wayne, today I want to dive into the heart failure. Can you tell me a little bit more about it? What happened to it, and what are some of the background details that people should know about?
Oh, the heart failure. The heart failure is actually a nickname for a dredge barge that operated out of Alpena from about 1900 till around 1910. And it was nicknamed heart failure because it just gave so much pain to the contractors that operated it. Over the course of its decade of work here in Alpena, it probably sank about 20 times. And it was involved a lot of times in laying pipes and cables across the river and dredging water intakes and moving cargoes back and forth, building docks. But it seemed like every project that it was involved in, it had bad luck and it ended up sinking. And so it was owned by the Murray Company out of Saginaw. It was chartered by the city of Alpena, and by 1910 they just had enough of this ship, and recovered it out of the water and brought it up into Isaacson Bay and placed it on the bottom permanently.
So it gave its own little permanent resting place here in the bay.
Yeah, that's it.
That's such an interesting story about the heart failure. I mean, it seems like it really did cause people a lot of headaches, a lot of heart trouble, maybe a couple of heart attacks on the boat.
Yeah.
But tell me a little bit about, how did it sink so many times? Why was it sinking so many times?
I think it just had bad luck, and it was an old boat, and that just wasn't kept up well. And so very often it would spring a leak, and the workers would come by in the morning and it would be sitting on the river bottom. Or sometimes it would just sort of get out of control and just sink. It had boiler explosions. It had just about everything go wrong with it that you can imagine. So
what a troubled ship. I feel bad for it a little bit. You got to feel for ships like that, especially when you're sinking over 20 times.
Yeah, exactly.
The heart failure may have been a headache for workers on and off the docks, but it played an important role in the creation of Alpena. As one of two dredge barges located in the Thunder Bay National Marine Sanctuary, the vessel was able to haul many items that created Alpena's infrastructure. But when the ship failed, it failed, disrupting navigation and delaying city development. Eventually, it was time to put the ship to rest for good. Now the dredge barge serves another purpose. What makes this place such a unique area to dive for divers? Because I know it's a hot diving spot, as well as there are other activities that go on there.
Because it's next to the reefs, it's actually a pretty cool situation on the bottom where there's lots of of hills and valleys on the water, and most of the rest of Isaacson Bay is just sort of a flat, featureless plain of sand. But there are a lot of natural rock outcrops that are where the heart failure happened to be placed, and there are a lot of dredge spoil deposits. When they built or dug the channels going in Thunder Bay River and into the Portland Cement Company, all of that spoil, the rock and the sand that was dredged off the bottom, ended up getting dumped up in Isaacson Bay, and so you have these like mounds of debris, and then the heart failure is kind of sitting right in between that, and so it's kind of a very picturesque sort of dive spot. It's also a natural habitat for lake trout and whitefish, and so there are quite a lot of fish, particularly in the fall during spawning season.
So you'll find a couple of fishermen hanging out, usually trying to get a good catch out there for the day.
Yeah, exactly. So lots of good fishing in the spring. It's walleye that are laying all over the bottom there, and you'll see a lot of fishermen kind of out and about there. It also has some invasive species on it. There are zebra and quagga mussels that are on the shipwreck itself, and it's also a habitat for the hemimysis, which are these tiny little shrimp. And when they hatch in the early part of the spring, you can see tens of thousands of them. They look like swarms of mosquitoes that are flying all over the shipwreck.
Disassembled at the bottom of the bay, just north of what is now Lafarge, the legacy of the heart failure lives on through the city it helped create. And that's all the time we have here for On the Deck this summer. Special thanks to Wayne Lusardi and all of the maritime archaeologists here at the Thunder Bay National Marine Sanctuary. We had a blast exploring these shipwrecks and learning about these rich pieces of history that sit at the bottom of Lake Huron. We hope you can join us next summer for another edition of On the Deck.